Hello and welcome back, dear listener. I hope you are doing fantastic. As always, I want to hear that you're doing fantastic, so if you like this video, or even if you hated this video, leave me a comment. I will respond to you, probably in a positive manner because that's how I respond to comments. You could probably be mean to me and I would still be very, very nice to you because that's what I do. Anyways, again, if you like this video, please consider liking, subscribing, leave a comment. I would love to hear from you. And that is all I have to say for the intro. So without further ado, here are 4 stories from Reddit involving cults. Enjoy. This is a long one, guys, but it's worth the read. It really freaked me out at the time. And if anyone has a solid idea of what this was, or if you've had similar experiences, I would love to hear it. This happened to me a while back when I decided to go on another camping trip alone. I have always liked camping alone. There's something serene and sobering about being isolated in the middle of the wilderness, and I have always found it relaxing. So I planned out what trail I was going to take, packed my camping gear and my rifle for protection, and jumped into my truck. I get to this trail early in the morning, and I hike about 15 to 20 miles until I found that right spot. And then I head off the trail to find a place to put my tent up. I stumble upon this nice-sized clearing and decide that it's a nice, beautiful spot to settle down. Now, I am exhausted at this point, but I set up the tent at the southernmost edge of the clearing next to the tree line, and I manage to get a small fire going. I roast some weenies and I start to hear a sound in the distance underneath all of the forest noise. It sounded like an animal, most likely a deer, with a lame leg, as it sounded like the animal was making a walking and a dragging noise. I was feeling bad for the poor guy, but it was too far away and it was getting dark, so I really couldn't go find it and put it out of its misery. I think nothing of it after that, and I go about eating my food. After I eat, I douse the fire and I crawl into my tent and insert myself into my sleeping bag. I decide that even at my exhausted and relaxed state, I can't go to sleep, so I pull out a book I brought with me and I start to read by the light of my small lamp. Hours go by and I hear that sound again, this time closer, right at the opposite side of the clearing. Surprised, I put my book down and I listen to this animal drag across the clearing straight toward my tent. It was really loud at this point, and it now sounded like the hooves were all being heavily planted with the dragging noise following seconds after. Like the deer was maybe dragging something along? It makes it to about what I assume is the middle of the clearing and it stops. And then I hear nothing. No breathing. Not a sound from this animal. I unzip the tent and look out into the clearing. Nothing but trees and darkness. What the hell? Unnerved at this point, I zip the tent back up and I sit there, listening for other sounds. Nothing, just the crickets and the breeze. I decide that there are a lot of strange noises in the woods, and I just try to not let it bother me. Besides, I had my rifle. I start to doze off when I hear men's laughter off in the distance to my right, and then women's laughter, and then sticks snapping far off to my left. I'm up now, wondering if what I'm hearing is really what I am hearing, or if it's just a product of me being half asleep. I hear more faint laughing from a couple other different directions, all different. Old men, old women, maybe even children, and this confirms that it's real. The noises are closing in, and I grab my rifle, preparing to fire off a warning shot in the air, just in case they came too close. Something about this laughter, how far in I was, the noise earlier, and the time of the night told me that this was not just another family strolling through. I was on edge enough already, but then I noticed that the nightlife was dead quiet. Not even the wind was making a noise. I decided enough was enough. I unzipped the tent and fired a shot into the night. I sat there and surveyed the tree line. I saw nothing. I listened intensely to my surroundings. No laughing, and the forest sound had returned. Relaxing just a bit, and figuring that I scared off whoever it was, I sat down, and in my exhausted state, I fell asleep. I wake up later in a cold sweat, racked with anxiety, and it was still dark outside. I immediately hear 2 people whispering not too far from my tent. Alert, I grab my rifle and listen to what they're saying. I can't make out much, but I hear something about being lost, so I shout, "Hey, who's there?" The voices fall silent. I shout again, "Are you guys lost? Who's there?" Suddenly, a huge burst of flame, like from a flamethrower, erupted from the middle of the clearing, illuminating several silhouettes of people just standing around. In shock, I fire my rifle, blowing a hole straight through the front of my tent, and it goes dark. Without checking my surroundings, I get up and sprint out of my tent, making a hard left back to where the trail was. I hiked until sunrise, straight back to my truck, with my head over my shoulders the entire way, and I never heard anyone follow me. Never saw anyone or anything the whole way, but I could not shake this feeling that I was being watched. After that, my enjoyment of camping alone left me, like I left all my gear in the wood that night. So my dad claimed to be in a satanic cult back in his 20s, before he met my mom, and this was one of his experiences. From what he told me, this cult was the real deal. Necrophilia, worship of Satan, every member had to get a pentagram tattoo. My dad had one, but after he left, he got a tattoo over it. You can still kind of see the faint outline of the original. This cult supposedly killed people. They are most likely located in Arizona, near Tucson, and that's where he found them. He said he joined because his wife and kid were murdered. He was not in the best mental health. He said he didn't do anything bad, but he supposedly did kill one of the cult members that was responsible for his old family's death. He said when he was there, they ended up getting his dead grandma on the phone. He said that it sounded just like her, and she said, "I'll see you in hell, Eric," and started laughing maniacally. Then, after all that, when he left, something might have followed him and attached itself to me. After my dad left a year ago, things started to get weird. If you have seen my other posts, you can see what I mean. I think it realized my dad was getting old and weak, and thought that I might be a better victim to terrorize. My only other explanation was the one time I astral projected when I was 7, and something could have followed me, Insidious style. I don't know if I should believe him, but it does sound real. Plus, he does have the tattoo. Also, that cult was one of the typical mid-80s to 90s cults, so they're most likely gone now. I went to Moonville when I was in college in Nelsonville. We decided at around 10 p.m., hey, let's go search for this tunnel, and we arrived around 10:45. Unaware of the parking lot and bridge that led right to it, we parked a few miles down the road from an old railroad track. Our friend promised he knew the way from there. We followed the walking path that just stops at the very steep embankment, almost 90 degrees. We all climbed down, and then we came to Raccoon Creek and crossed the shallow parts. We wander around for a bit, roughly till, midnight, trying to find the tunnel, and anything particularly paranormal or out of the ordinary, when all of a sudden we're in a canyon-type deal, and everything in the middle of it is dead. Trees, birds, insects, nothing was living. Animal corpses covered the entire canyon. One end was a cliff about 35 feet down, so I'm not sure what was down there. When we found our way out of the canyon, it was like we had just exited a different world altogether. Everything on this side was living again. You could even hear the birds. Thinking to ourselves that maybe we'd only spent 30 minutes in there, we checked our phones, which were our flashlights as well, and they were almost dead. It was 3 a.m. Knowing that this was the witching hour, we all started to freak out a bit. We knew there were cults and sacrificial rituals being performed out in these woods, and not knowing where we were, trying to use our maps on our phones, no service though, so that wasn't much help. They all started to die one by one until we got to that last bit of battery on the last phone, and then we found a 1-lane gravel road and instantly found our vehicles. We got the hell out of there. Since then, I've only been back once, and it was during the daytime after finding out about the bridge to it. Definitely one of the more creepy experiences I had down there, and I haven't ventured back to that spot from the first night, and I don't plan on doing so ever again. Also to note, it's said that a goat man lives on top of the tunnel. Though I had no encounter to prove this, I thought maybe it was worth a mention. So I've always lurked this subreddit, but it wasn't until today that I remembered something I could actually post. So warning, there's a bit of a long road ahead. I'll try to keep it straightforward. I dated a girl when I was 19, and she was 17. I grew up Christian, and she did as well, but different denominations. She was Pentecostal. Her parents believed in homeschooling because their pastor at the time pushed it on the congregation. That was one of the many things that the pastor pushed that caused them more grief in the people's lives that they cared to admit. One day, my ex revealed to me that the pastor's son had touched or sexually assaulted many of the kids in the church, and it was, of course, overlooked and brushed off. She said she believed he did something to her, but she couldn't remember for sure and didn't want to play the victim if nothing had, in fact, happened to her. I understood, and she went on to tell me that she never really felt safe at the church. She hated her parents for blindly following the leadership of the pastor. She described it as very cult-like for a church. Even though other churches she attended were part of that organization, they didn't feel the same. I always got a bad vibe when she told me stories of her childhood and how messed up it was because of that church organization. So anyways, that church that she went to when she was little, from birth to when she was 10 years old, was in her hometown, and she'd moved to my hometown since. One Saturday, I was really interested in learning about her hometown. Not even thinking of the church, there were just some cool points of interest to see. So we drove through there for dinner and a little tour of the hometown. Things were going great, and then we were heading home. A faster way, according to Google Maps, when suddenly she said, "Wait, my church is down this way." I responded asking her if it was okay to take this way, or if it made her feel uncomfortable or anything like that. She said it was okay, and actually insisted that we stop by her old church so I could see it. By the time we reached her old church, it was getting dark out. She gave me a little tour from inside the car, showing me places where they used to park and where she'd fallen and scraped her knee one time, etc., etc. She pointed to the back of the church and said, "Just back there used to be overgrown, but they have put in a huge parking lot recently." I thought to myself, I guess they haven't installed any lights for it yet, so I shine my lights toward it. Nothing illuminates. Then I turn on my high beams and nothing illuminates again. I drive closer. Again, nothing. It was pitch black, and on each of the sides of the church there was pretty much nothing, except for the neighborhood houses, but they were pretty far. So I started to get this awful feeling. I guess you could say it was dread. My ex was still in that weird state of mind because of her past history at this place. I didn't want to say anything, but she vibed it off me, and then she felt the same dread. She started screaming, and that freaked me out even more, so I slammed the car into reverse so fast, turned it around, and got the hell out of there. For at least 10 to 15 minutes, there was a feeling like something was in the back of that car. Something horrible. Funny thing is, I still had my high beams on, and they were piercing the dark just fine when we got back to the road. She called her parents, and they told us to get out of there now, and that we should have never have gone. That creeped me the hell out. To this day, I remember it vividly. Since then, her and I broke up because she started facing some tough times and wasn't receptive to any help I was offering. Her parents divorced and she spiraled into drugs. And all this makes me think that maybe whatever was in the back seat of the car after that night, maybe it attached itself to her. Oh, how we in the horror community love the fact that cult and creepy are absolutely synonymous with each other. Anyway, so that was 4 stories from Reddit involving cults. I hope you guys enjoyed. I know I did, reading them, narrating them, and having you listen to them. If you did enjoy it, please consider liking, subscribing, leave me a comment. I would love to hear from you. The links for all these stories are in the video description below. That all said, I hope to see you around for the next video. And until then, sleep well.